Alright, so in this video I'm going to go over a few different types of synthetic insulations and kind of go into detail about my journey on trying to find a synthetic jacket that can keep you warm while wet, but one that still has similar properties to down. So the types of synthetic insulation I'm going to go over today are Thermatek, Coreloft, Coreloft Continuous, and PrimaLoft, and that's basically it. Those are kind of the three main contenders. So really quick, big shout out to the comments on my last video who helped me figure some of this stuff out. So yeah, let's just get into it. Arc'teryx does Coreloft, Patagonia does PrimaLoft. There's a bunch of different other types of synthetic insulation. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of all the different types of synthetic insulation, there's a few things that are really important about it. So the reason that I wanted to find a really warm and long-lasting jacket that was made out of synthetic versus down is because I was on the search for a jacket that I could just take out at any time. I could compress up, something that wouldn't be too heavy, has similar properties to down, but when and if it starts raining, I wouldn't have to take it off. I was looking for an all-around jacket that I could take out anytime if I didn't know what the weather was going to do on a backpacking trip or in the city, whatever. And that's why I was looking for something synthetic. Unfortunately, in my tons and tons of research, there really is not anything synthetic that's gonna do as well as down does, unfortunately. And if there is, it's gonna definitely not pack down to the same size for its weight at all. Patagonia claims that their Nano Puff hoodie, I believe, their synthetic fill is warmer than down. I really find that hard to believe. So one other thing that I just found out a couple days ago when I was doing more research about synthetic jackets is that pretty much whatever synthetic fill jacket you go with, over time it is going to really lose its loft. It already has about 50 to 60% of the warmth to weight as down, so that's already a downside. Even over time, it's going to lose its loft. And when it loses its loft, it's going to lose its insulating properties. And that's kind of where the three different types of synthetic insulation I'm going to talk about today come into play. We have Thermatek, Coreloft, Coreloft Continuous, PrimaLoft Gold, Silver, and Black, and then PrimaLoft Silver High Loft, which is Coreloft's or PrimaLoft's continuous insulation. Really quick rundown of all these. The most warm, long-lasting, and waterproof of all of these insulations is definitely going to be Thermatek. Thermatek and Coreloft, and I learned this from one of the comments in my last video, so thank you to whoever said that. I'll put you in the description. They're very knowledgeable. Thermatek originates from ClimaShield Prism, and Coreloft originates from ClimaShield something, I forget the name. But they both originate from ClimaShield. So Thermatek is what's used in the Arc'teryx Dully, and Coreloft Continuous is what's used in the Arc'teryx Nuclei SV, which is the jacket that I just did a review on and initial thoughts video on. While they're both very similar, Thermatek, which unfortunately is not in the nuclei, is a bit more durable, and the one difference about Coreloft Continuous versus Thermatek is that Thermatek is actually, the fibers in the jacket are soaked in a DWR finish so that literally no matter what, your jacket does not get wet. I thought that Coreloft did do that, Coreloft Continuous did do that too, but I'm not 100% sure on that, so maybe that's something people can answer in the comments. So now that moves us on to PrimaLoft. PrimaLoft has gold, silver, and black. Gold is going to have the highest clo value, silver is a little bit less, and black is a little bit less. So silver is going to be more in their activewear stuff as well as the black, and then gold is going to be more in their warmer things. PrimaLoft Gold, I have a ski jacket with PrimaLoft Gold in it that is like super old. I got it at the thrift store. It's not my Patagonia Nano Air hoodie I found at the thrift store. That did lose quite a bit of its loft as well, but this is a different jacket, actually a ski snow jacket, and it is not warm at all anymore. I don't know how old it is. I think it was made in like 2009 when I looked on the tag. It's a pretty old jacket, and it has almost zero insulating value now. Yeah, so that was kind of a big wake-up call for me, that the fact that like 10 years later or whatever, it just doesn't even work at all. And obviously a huge part of that could have been that the previous owner ran it through a bunch of super hot wash cycles and like dried it on really high heat. I don't know. But from what research I've been doing, PrimaLoft Gold is just not as good at long-term durability. The best thing for that is going to be Thermatek. And I would say right behind it probably Coreloft Continuous. What I will say though is that the main moral of the story, after learning so much about Coreloft, Thermatek, and PrimaLoft, is that really, no matter what synthetic insulation you can get your hands on right now, it is not going to perform nearly as well as down. There's no synthetic insulations on the market that have enough synthetic insulation for it to compare, even be as warm as down. Even my Arc'teryx Nuclei SV, it's a huge jacket, and it's just as warm as my $100 Decathlon 700 fill power belay rock climbing jacket by Simon. That thing was $100 and it literally compresses to this big, whereas my Nuclei looks like a sleeping bag. One thing I do hope for brands to start doing, and I think the reason they don't is because it's really expensive to produce this synthetic insulation, would be to create a jacket with like 300, maybe even 400 grams of continuous synthetic fill. So that there's actually a synthetic jacket on the market that compares to like a Canada Goose Mantra or the Arc'teryx Therm or something like that. I think it would be really cool, like even if it's just huge and bulky, to have some kind of product on the market like that. Technically speaking, has like a clo value of like 8 or 9. I think that would be really sweet. So to reiterate the conclusions of this video, Thermatek is the best, it's in the dually, it's the most durable. If you go on Reddit, you'll find that out pretty fast. Coreloft Continuous is right behind that in terms of durability. I don't know if it has the DWR finish. And PrimaLoft is also really good, like the Patagonia Nano Puff. It's a great jacket, super good. Patagonia Nano Air, great jacket. It's not going to retain its loft as well as Thermatek or Coreloft Continuous. If you're trying to decide between the Patagonia Das Parka and the Arc'teryx Nuclei SV, I personally would go with the Nuclei, but if you can get your hands on a dually and you have just unlimited budget, because it's probably going to be like $1,000 because they don't make them anymore, I would definitely go with the dually, because the dually is what has Thermatek. But in general, all of these, just get the jacket that fits you best. If you take good care of your jacket, it's not going to lose its loft. If you don't wash it 100 times, it's not going to turn into a bad jacket. Yeah, if it's a jacket that you're really going to need to use in the rain, you're just going to have to layer up, get a good rain shell, and maybe just an Arc'teryx Proton would be good for you. I mean, that's what I end up using. Moral of the story of my research is there's never going to be one end-all be-all jacket that has like the best synthetic insulation that lasts forever. You're just going to have to layer up and try out different jackets, see what fits and see what works and what doesn't. Unfortunately, there is nothing in existence right now that is synthetic that's going to come anywhere close to down with its compressibility and warmth to weight clo values. Either way, they're all going to be warm jackets. Synthetic generally isn't going to last as long as down. No matter what you do, it's just the more you compress it, the more it loses its loft and loses its warmth. PrimaLoft is the absolute worst with that. Thermatek is the best, and Coreloft Continuous I think is right behind it. So I would love to hear what everybody thinks of this little rant in the comments. Yeah, I mean, it's just really getting into the nitty-gritty of the situation. I think the most important thing is just to find a jacket that has, a good synthetic insulation. Doesn't really matter what type it is. If it fits really well and you really like it, go for it. So it's also important to take kind of everything I said with a grain of salt, because it's just such little things that don't matter all that much in the grand scheme of things. If you find a jacket that fits you really well and you find it really warm, then go with it. All these little nitty-bitty details are really not a huge deal. Any jacket you get with synthetic insulation that has, around 200 grams is going to be pretty warm, and it's not going to retain its loft super well. Like, that's just the reality of the situation. And any jacket you get that has down in it is going to be amazingly warm. It's going to compress super small, but you're not going to be able to wear it in a rainstorm. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next review.